everyone. Welcome to our first ever podcast. Today we're here with a psychologist called Clara.
So my name is Clara Tolet. I have a double good degree in social work and clinical psychology. I've studied a lot of psychoanalysis, but that's not my only intellectual background for sure and tool. I do work in a company it's an employee assistance program. And as well as being a clinical psychologist, I'm a manager. I help a team of clinical psychologists on their day-to-day job and to feel good. And lots of them are very young psychologists, so it's very specific. So that's how I think helping is the best, by helping people who support others as well.
So today we're going to be talking about procrastination and how it affects us and the whys. So Clara, to start off, maybe you could explain from a psychologist's perspective what procrastination is?
So maybe not all psychologists will agree with me, but for me, procrastination, I will see it a bit like a symptom, like a phenomenon that will happen in certain circumstances, let's say like that. And it can be very small, mid, or with a large effect on the person in its day-to-day life. Okay, so procrastination is basically not doing something you're supposed to do right now and just let some time pass before doing it, or maybe not doing it at all. So it's just that, and then that will depend on what the person thinks and when this is happening and how much that will be important as a psychologist. You know, what does the person say about it, basically?
Yeah. And for example, why do you think so many people struggle with this, even though like the person knows, like we know it's a bad habit, but why do you think people do it?
Just like I said, because it is a symptom, a very large portion of people are experimenting it, but not in the same way. So it's like, why do I eat so much sugar, even if I know it's not good for me? You have as many responses as you have people, all right? So I do believe that it's something related to different stuff. It can be anxiety, stress, it can be underestimating your abilities or overestimating them. It can be related to ADHD. It can be about a very specific period of time in your life. And it can be just because the human being is very good at not doing what it's supposed to do, right? The human being is always trying to find ways of not doing the right thing, but just what they want to do, basically.
Yeah, for example, do you think like there's some cases where people just feel so overwhelmed and they just want to do an excellent job at a certain assignment or a job, for example, and that's why they just keep pushing it back because they just don't want to start with that overwhelming feeling? Because, for example, it happens a lot to me. So I generally just want to know that because like I said, it really does happen to me. For example, like I want to work on a certain assignment and I'm just very overwhelmed because I want it to be really, really great. And I don't know if that has to do with the fact that maybe a person can be like very hard on themselves, or like what does it have to do with?
So that's related to anxiety. If you're feeling like it is something that you're experiencing, it is just the way it is. All right. So it just means that in some ways you are putting pressure on yourself, and pressure, it's not motivation. People are most of the time they're confusing the two of it. And if you're putting pressure on yourself, you're not motivating yourself. It means that you feel overwhelmed, you feel that there is a lot on your shoulders, and it's not encouraging you of doing what's supposed to do, what you want to do. But it's like, oh my goodness, there's so much to bear that I don't know. What if I'm doing it wrong? And what if it doesn't go well and the pressure is too much? And your mind will just be overwhelmed by it, and when you're in this state of mind, you're not in your full ability of doing your best, actually. So you're counterproductive in a way. All right. So it's I think that for a lot of people, it's about knowing yourself. If you know how you function, what works for you, what motivates you, what is good for you, you will procrastinate less because you know how you work. Okay, this is a sign. This is a lot of pressure for me, and I need to take a step back, do something else, and then go back to it. Yes, I will have less time, but either way, I will have less time to do what I'm supposed to do.
For example, would you say that people who struggle a lot with mental health issues are more prone to struggle with procrastination, or can it also happen to people who don't deal with those type of situations?
Well, a mental health issue is very a big piece. So I would not say that just because a lot of mental health problems, it's so complicated. Okay, we'll not say that about psychotics, for example. It's not the right term for it. So I would say, however, that it is a very common thing because it is very symptomatic of something the human being is not really good at, is compromising with themselves, knowing themselves and how they work. Basically, okay, I need to do this paper by the end of the day, so I need to know myself enough to know if I will have enough energy today to do it in the space and put my problems aside and everything. So that's why it's so common. I would say it will be more common for certain mental health issues, like for me, for example, ADHD, for very anxious people with like official disorder. For depressed people as well, it will be very common, but I don't want to be like it's for everybody the same, of course. It would be too easy if it was the same for everybody.
Yeah, of course. Like the experience is different for everybody. You know?
Of course.
And would you say that procrastination can be a good thing, or is it something that we should always try to avoid?
Neither. I would say neither. Trying to avoid a symptom, it's like throwing something that will always come back to you. You can't avoid something. If it's there, and you have to deal with it. You have to manage it. If you're trying to escape it, that's when you will even more procrastinate. All right. So you said if it is either something to avoid or something, the first part of your question.
Yeah. Like, could it be something good, or is it something to avoid always?
Well, neither good or bad. It's neutral. A symptom or an emotion are just the way they are. They're just presenting themselves at you, and you have to do something with it. And that's how you can accept who you are and how you work and know yourself, and maybe doing it a bit less for your life to be more comfortable.
Yes.
You know?
For example, I work really well. Like, I always get things done, but I tend to not organize myself really well sometimes. You know, like I have like, okay, I need to do something at 8:30, but then at 10:30 I have to do something else. So I think I'm gonna start the 10:30 first, and then the 8:30 first. But then 8:30 is like right there on the line. So I'm like, no, I have to do this. You know, it's like a very complicated thing. So would you say that procrastination can often be present with people who are less organized than people who have amazing organizing skills?
I would say for people who know themselves the best, because if don't you know these kind of people who are very disorganized but manage to do everything still,
barely.
right? It's just the way you are, how you function. And I would say maybe try to embrace it instead of fighting it, and see what happens, you know, for little things at first, just to be safe, you know. But it's just the way people are. For example, I will never have someone on session saying, I always do things last minute, and I always get things done, and it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Because they don't have any problem with it. It's just how they are. It's just people with maybe, maybe I should be someone else. Maybe I should function differently. Maybe, no, you're just the way you are. And if it is a problem, we can talk about why it is a problem. How does it make you feel, for example? Or how people respond to this,
Yeah.
right? Because you have someone very, okay, I need to do things on time, something that some people that will organize very, 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 very well. But it's not a better way of being, it's just a different way
Yeah.
of being.
Okay. No, yeah, that's good to know because I always get things done, no matter what, no matter how chaotic I'm like a chaotic worker, but I always meet the deadline. So that's good to know. Okay. And for example, do you have like maybe any, because sometimes people can struggle a lot with this. So for example, do you have like any tips on how to not battle, but like maybe to have a better process with procrastination? Like trying not to do it as much, for example.
Okay, so first, the person needs to notice when this is happening, in which situations it will happen more. Because there is sometimes some kind of triggers, and it's important to know them to be able to maybe adjust depending on it, to adapt. So first, try to find the triggers, try to find the situations where it's going to be more of a problem. Try to compromise with yourself. That's a very important word, because most of people will say it's either you procrastinate, either you don't. And it's not like that. You can compromise with yourself by saying, okay, if I don't do something, I will maybe do something for me for 10 minutes, for example, 5 minutes. And then I will try again to do what I need to do. And it's about trying little things, very little things. And depending on the person and the personality, some things will work and some things won't. For example, when I was studying clinical psychology, you have a lot of books to read, a lot of it. And you have, 50 pages to memorize. And I would put candies every 10 pages.
Oh, okay.
This way, I would have my treat and I will have my moment to have my sugar and just chill, And that's how I compromised with myself. I don't want to go into it. It's too much. Okay, but I can find a way. So you have to be gentle with yourself. Okay. I would say know yourself and be gentle, because the more you will have negative thoughts about yourself, it's the same impact if someone insults you and if you insult yourself, even if it's just in your head. So be gentle with yourself and just get to know yourself, because it's not easy. And that's the best, I would say.
So you would say that it's very important for you to just not be hard on yourself and have like empathy towards yourself with these situations.
Just like you would have for another person, but it's easier for another person.
Yeah, for like a friend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, and when you're working with clients, like what's the first step in helping them stop procrastinating? Like, do you also say, like, for example, like maybe when they try to study, do you also give them like your advice on the candy, or is it different for different patients?
Well, that depends on the personality. Some people will say, "Oh, yes, but but." For some for some patients, they will fight everything that you will bring as a solution. So you will have to get deeper into it. Okay, why are you like that? Why are you so difficult with yourself or so mean to yourself? So we'll try to find out if there was maybe one person in their life that was mean to them or difficult with them, and they reproducing something unconsciously. I would say that I will try to find out what kind of personality they have. I had a very depressed patient one that was incapable of buying a printer. I remember this because the time that he, after I don't think 8 or 9 sessions, he was like, I bought a printer. And I was like, oh yeah, that's so nice. Because he was very depressed and incapable of doing anything or with an X amount of time. So on his case, it was about working on the depression and what led him to this position of being paralyzed. Because even procrastinating, in some way, for some people, you are temporarily paralyzed.
Yeah.
I can't do it right now. I can't do it. And it's not, you're not going to do something else that is more efficient or pertinent for your life, but you're just paralyzed. I need to do it, but I need to do something else, and your brain is working very fast, very quickly. And so, yeah, it's about taking the time of getting to know the person in front of you, the patient, and work with them at their rhythm. The rhythm, the timing in therapy is everything.
Yeah. And is it hard to like go deeper into whatever it is that they're struggling?
That depends if they want to go deeper or not. I had another patient with ADHD. He was procrastinating a lot, and he didn't want to accept who he was and how he was functioning. So we never went anywhere together, and not deeply enough, because he wasn't ready. And who am I to force him, right?
Yeah,
So he was, no, it's a problem to procrastinate. I need to do things. And I was like, it's not who you are. Why are you so hard on yourself? And that's just it. So the rhythm, the timing is also about if the person wants to work on what is happening for them, because it can be weird, but a lot of people go to therapy, but they're not ready yet.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to tell them it's not the right time for you. You have to come back later.
Yeah, because I think they have to be sort of in the commitment with themselves to help themselves first. You know, I think that's the reason why. People know when they're ready for therapy.
Sometimes they don't. I do think that it's some people, it's a feeling like I'm gonna take a call. I'm just gonna take a call and see how it is. So where I work, people have a number and they will call and they will fall on a psychologist, okay? And some people, they just have the courage to call, and that's the first step. And very sorry, they will know at the end of the call if they're ready to go deeper or not. And that's our job as clinical psychologists to tell them, okay, you seem ready or you don't seem ready. That's not the right time for you. That's something very tricky, because people will tell, yes, I do want to go to therapy, and they will come with a small issue, and you can sense that there is a whole world of issues behind it, but it is what it is.
Yeah. I just remembered. So, for example, I know that there's a lot of children who struggle also with procrastination at a very young age, and parents can be very hard on their children, you know, because they're gonna be like, no, like my child is just very lazy. They're not doing their schoolwork. They're not working properly. Like, what's wrong with my child? And they can be very hard on the child, you know, and that I think that can really influence on how they grow up, and maybe then in the future they can be very hard with themselves in adult life.
Yeah.
So, like, what advice would you give a parent who has a child who struggles a lot with procrastination?
Don't be so hard on yourself as a parent, because that's why you're hard on your child, because you're feeling as a parent that you're pressured for your child to get through school and to wash themselves and to eat properly. And kids don't want that. They don't. They just want to play, and they want to sleep at the time they want to sleep, and they have a whole bunch of energy, and they want to spend time with their parents, and school doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't, to be honest, it doesn't make sense. But it is pressure that the parents are feeling to be good parents, and there's a lot of pressure as well. nowadays to be like with the positive education and everything. And that's why they will project on their child.
Yeah.
He's lazy, doesn't want to do anything. Something must be wrong with him or her or they, with them. No, nothing's wrong with your child. It's not about laziness. It doesn't make any sense to force a child to go into a room for 8 hours and expect that they like it. It's not how a child works. But since they have the pressure of the society, they have a pressure of themselves. And that's where the anger and everything. And since it's not, the emotion, it's not put in the right place, it doesn't go well, neither for them or for the kids. So get to know yourself, get some education about how a child works, how their brain works, because a fully grown brain is at 28.
Wow.
All right. So it takes a while until your brain is fully grown and you have all the abilities to do whatever you want to do. So they have to work with the child and accept that they will fail, because that's what kids do best. They make their parents feel like they are failing, unless they put so much pressure that the kids will obey very easily. But that's not, on my opinion, the right way. Because if your kids obey to everything, how will they make their own decisions in the future? They will just obey anyone that will have a sense of authority, you know? So that's the hardest part about being a parent. You have to make your children learn how to sometimes agree with the world as it is and the difficulties that they have, but as well accept that they will make you feel like a failure, but you're doing a good job.
Yeah. Yeah, because I also think that some parents just tend to be hard on themselves, themselves, but also their children, because maybe of how they grew up. Like
Oh,
maybe
absolutely. You have a whole history about how the grandparents, and there's a whole side of psychology dedicated to that transgenerational impact. And for sure, even if every generation most of the time learns something, if some unconscious problems are not put in the conscious part of their life, they will reproduce everything that they lived.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And for example, do you think in this day and age, social media has a lot to do with procrastination, like as a sort of distraction, or not really? For example, I think like for 2000s kids, it was like video games or stuff like that, not really social media. But do you think social media influences on that today?
It's difficult to tell, because in the same time, we are trying to raise the kids to obey less and understand better. So in the two phenomenon in the same time, of course, the problem with screens in general is that they're not very good for the brain to develop. They're not bad for everything. Not everything is black or white. I think that it's a matter of showing kids different ways of spending time as much as possible, going to the library or going to the movies. For example, if you show the experience of a movie theater, right? That's how you watch a good movie, and you have the popcorn, you have all the ambiance. They will less maybe watch something at home, but it's very complicated because we are asking parents to work full time and to pay everything and to have kids and to raise them very gently but not too gently and everything. So it's very difficult to sometimes go in front of the TV and let me cook because I need to do stuff into the house. So they have something to do with it, but not directly, on my opinion. Okay. I would say it's a shortcut to understand the phenomenon. Pressure in general, I think, is very hard on parents and kids. And you can see that parents and adults are as much as addicted to screens than kids. It's just as for kids, since the brain is developing, it's a bit higher, let's say it like that. But when you see adults, they have their phone all the time with them. They are looking at Netflix and Prime and everything. So, yeah, I think everybody is just how the brain works. It just works without the screen. We do like it, and that's it. But we have to compromise.
Yeah. And for example, would you say that it's sort of like a 50-50 situation with laptops, for example? Because, sometimes it happens that you're studying with your laptop and you have your Spotify and your notes like open, and you're trying to study, and you have like a certain amount of days to study for.
Yep.
But also you have the freedom to literally just open whatever, like YouTube or Instagram or even Netflix on the same device at the same time that you're studying, So a lot of people don't respect their study time because of that situation. Like you're trying to study, and then they're like, okay, I'm gonna take a little break, like 5-minute break, a 20-minute break. I'm gonna watch something on Netflix, and then a whole hour passed, and they didn't even notice. So would you say that a computer or like technology in general is like a bad thing to study with, or for procrastination, I mean?
Studies show that the more you manipulate like information, the more you will learn them, mesmerize them. So just the computer for me is not a very efficient cognitive way of learning something anyway. So you have to read, you have to reread something, or in a different perspective, you have to write it, in computer just by hand. It doesn't matter, but you have to manipulate information to work properly. At some point, you will need to have a little bit of time in a neutral area. Why? Because studies show that you will, for example, when you have an exam in a very in a room like that, for example, you will have to work your studies in the same environment for your brain to be able to understand that there is a proper space, and it is the same space, so you will be able to give the information back better if the study environment and the I forgot the English word for it. When you have the quiz, it's important to be in the same space. So you have to manipulate the information at one point. But some people work very well with music into their ears or things like that. So, okay, you can do that. You can have a computer with multiple things open. But at one point, you will have to know yourself enough to think if it's working or not. If you see that you can't have a break of 20 minutes because you're on Netflix for an hour, you have to put an alarm on your telephone. And that's it. And that's completely okay. You don't have to be a robot and have a clock in your head all the time, all right? Otherwise, you're not into Netflix and you're not enjoying your break.
Yeah.
And you're just stressing. It's 20 minutes. Or you just choose, I remember at the time, for a while, I would have 20 minutes of Netflix and then 1 hour of working, and I would do that. I would take 20 minutes episodes.
Yeah.
And that's it. You have to help yourself. That's, and compromise and know what is working or not.
So it's basically all about managing yourself, basically. Okay. And for example, have you personally ever struggled with procrastination?
Yes, I think so. But I'm very good at motivating myself. So, and I've learned from an early age that intrusive thoughts are a very bad thing, very counterproductive. So I had my goal in mind my first degree, then my second degree, and I would feel motivated enough to do, okay, what can I do else? What can I do else? But yeah, I had procrastinated.
Could you define counterproductive? Because I noticed that you mentioned it like twice.
Yeah. It's when you want to do something well, but by doing everything to do it well, you're not doing it well at all. Like you're trying, I don't know, for example, you want to have a perfect dinner,
Okay.
for example, and you have your step parents over and you want everything to be perfect. So you're choosing a good recipe and a good music and decorations and everything, but you're doing so much, too much, that you may have a lot of, you may fail because you're doing a lot of new things in the same time and you're not listening to your own limits and boundaries. So you're doing everything for others and not for yourself. And so you can be counterproductive because at the end, maybe the meal will fail because it's too complicated. Could be very good, but if you didn't have the decorations to do and prepare all the room and maybe do all the laundry in the same time. And so you so much focus on something without taking into account everything around it that you will fail in the end. And that's so bad for the self-esteem. Very, very, very bad. And it will make you feel that you thought you did everything right and something must be wrong with you. But no, nothing wrong with you. It's what you chose that wasn't appropriate in the end.
And does that concept also apply in situations that, for example, you're still very hard on yourself and you're trying to get the perfect dinner, as you said, like for example, like the dinner, and it did turn out perfect, like it's perfect this, like the perfect cake, the perfect drinks, whatever, but something inside you still feels like something's missing, but everything is wonderful. Does that still apply, like counterproductivity still apply in that situation?
Could be. I would say that depends if the patient tells that that feeling, that depends on the result. If it is something that you can see or hear or feel, and if after the party you still feel very bad inside of you, I would say maybe counterproductive on an emotional point of view. Why not? Yeah. It's a way of protecting your self-esteem because it's not very good. So you're trying everything to protect the few that you have. So you're like, okay, it's very common among students in high school because they don't know yet. They're still very young. So they will say, I have to study in history, but maybe I'm not very good at history. I don't have a good, memory. And so they will say, okay, but I still have time, and they will think about something else, and they will just block, the thoughts and everything. And indeed, at the end, they don't have a good degree because they didn't study for it, but they're like, this way I know why. It was because I didn't study for it. It's not because something's wrong with me. So fear is a defense mechanism. It can be, okay? It's a way of protecting yourself or parts of yourself. And procrastination, can be a way of saying, okay, it's a problem for later, and I will deal with the consequences later. And still, for now, I'm protecting myself. But as you can notice, it is a way you don't know yourself very well in the situation. You're just letting the problem for later because you're not comfortable enough to face it. Because what is the problem not to be good in history, for example? It's okay. You can be good at other things and it's fine. So yeah. Do you know I think it's a philosophical concept, Buridan donkey, It's like a donkey who's equally hungry and thirsty, and he has something to eat and something to drink. He will die because he can't make a choice.
Wow.
Yeah. So the point is of this very hard story is that choosing is always renouncing to something. So sometimes human being will avoid choosing by letting time and failure decide for them. Okay. And in the case of the donkey, it just died because it was too essential things for it.
And do you think that's like a metaphor for failure? Like,
No. It's a metaphor for a human being liking to be in the control. I want everything.
yeah.
And if it's like the extreme side of it.
Right.
I want to control absolutely everything. I want to be able to choose, but not renouncing. But choosing is always about renouncing to something else. And that's important to know. If I'm choosing to work, I'm choosing to be focused on something that means a lot to me. And that can be a lot of pressure, to yourself, that it's my studies and it's the degree. And if I'm starting and if it doesn't work either way, and a lot of emotion involved, and it's tough. Yeah.
Have you ever watched the movie The Black Swan?
Yeah.
Yeah? Do you think the character struggled with that? Like trying to be in control of succeeding and just
There
doing
is
things
something
right?
about control for sure. Very extreme. I don't remember it correctly. I remember like the last scene, but definitely when you're in a ballet, you have a lot of control. Sports are about control, and everything needs to be kind of perfect in classical dance. And in this, the higher you get on something, the higher the pressure is as well. And she's trying to do something so perfectly that she forgets about herself and what drove her to this path at the beginning.
And do you think a lot of like students can relate to that feeling?
Well, when you have study psychology, you have a whole bunch of very different students. You have, I don't know. I think that a lot of students want to do well and are just trying to find something that will motivate them, that will give them some kind of purpose, some even if it's just having some money at the end of the month and being able to enjoy your hobbies, but you're trying to make a bit of sense and in the same time to get away from your parents and it's it's a very peculiar period in a life, the studying part at the 20s, 18 to 25 or 30. It's a very peculiar period of time. And you're just trying to find out who you are, what you like, what you dislike, no matter if it is in studies or in love. And you trying to find yourself, and sometimes you can be a bit hard on yourself, I think. Not you, but people.
That was like you say things in a very beautiful way. Like I don't know how to describe it, but I really like it. Well, I think we can wrap it up now.
Okay.
Thank you everyone so much for tuning in, and we will see you on the next episode.